Breaking news, Amazon Studios is closing its open submissions program. I'll tell you all the details. So yesterday I just received this email from Amazon Studios, which I suppose went out to everybody who ever submitted anything to Amazon, that they're closing down their submission program. Let's talk about it, what that means for filmmakers, content creators, and script writers. I'll start by reading the email first, because quite frankly it's actually really funny. And then we'll talk a little bit about the history of Amazon Studios, what did the program really entail, and what does it mean for the future. The email starts out, "Hi, blah blah blah. As we have grown and evolved over the last several years, we are making changes to our website and closing our open call for script and concept submissions. As of April 13th, 2018, we are no longer accepting submissions. Submissions received will continue to be reviewed and evaluated by Amazon Studios and will be available on our website until June 30th, 2018. Thank you all for your contributions. Amazon Studio teams." And then there's a frequently asked questions thing here. Why is the open call for submissions ending? At Amazon, we're always reinventing ourselves and looking for ways to become even more efficient, and while we no longer accept new submissions, there are other options. 1. Submit videos and scripts to film festivals at withoutabox.com. 2. Sign up at IMDb Pro to connect and share your work with other professionals. 3. Publish your videos at Prime Video Direct. I have a script, mini Bible, or video that I was not able to submit. What are my next steps? While we'll no longer accept new submissions, there are other options. 1. And then they sort of repeat the same thing from above. What happens to the scripts, mini Bibles, or videos I have submitted? We will evaluate and respond to all submissions. All submissions on your profile will be available for viewing, rating, or downloading until June 30th, 2018. Then what happens after June 30th, 2018? Submissions will no longer be available for viewing, rating, or downloading after June 30th, 2018. What will happen to Storybuilder? Storybuilder is still available for customers. What will happen to Storywriter? Storywriter is still available to customers in web browsers, but will no longer accept script submissions. So that was it. Pretty cut and dry. Not really giving much information about anything. So let's just dig into this a little bit. I also put the email up on the screen so you can basically follow along with what I'm talking about here. So the beginning, as we have grown and evolved over the last several years, we're making changes to our website, blah blah blah. Yeah, grown and evolved, that's a little bit grown. Certainly not in size, because they've been canceling pretty much just about anything. And it's pretty clear from reading this that they're not really interested in seeing anything other than, like, you know, what their own network will generate, which I can't really blame them for. You know, I mean, everything I'm saying here, it may sound a little bit like sour grapes, but it's really not. It's like they're a business like everybody else, and they have to do what they have to do. And we'll talk a little bit about that later, if that really is such a wise move. But submissions received will continue to be reviewed and developed by Amazon Studios, will be available. So basically, if you send in something before the 13th, which actually I may add that they canceled this as of April 13th. I received the email here in Europe, because this was probably sent out in California time, April 13th, on the 14th. So even if I had like a last minute thing I wanted to submit, I couldn't. So it would have been nice if they would have at least, you know, given people like you know, a week's time or 2 weeks time or something like that to finish up their scripts or mini Bibles or whatever, you know. But to send out an email that essentially, like, yesterday this whole thing has been canceled, is kind of a little, yeah, kind of a little dubious. But basically, if you have submitted something before the 13th, it will still be active until June 30th. And but of course, you know, I mean, let's be honest, I wouldn't. We'll talk a little bit about the whole program here, but I wouldn't have much hope that anything good's going to come of it. And then essentially, after they sort of like tell you, hey, look, it's all over, they'll tell you what you can do to remedy that, basically, how you can, get your career going. Of course, submitting videos and script to film festival, you should have been doing that anyway. Signing up at IMDb Pro, we should have been doing that anyway. And published on Prime Video Direct, it's kind of ironic that they're pimping their own service. Which, by the way, I may add that Prime Video Direct slashed their payouts to contributors to filmmakers by as much as 70% as of January 1st this year. So there are a lot of other options, and I will actually make a video very soon. And actually, I wrote the basic script out already about distribution. But it's so funny that they sort of like canceling their own service and then sort of like pimping their own services, which, by the way, that, IMDb Pro is owned by Amazon, and I suppose so is Without a Box. So yeah, basically all you can do is use Amazon services, and there's nothing else really for you. So I don't want to make this video, the podcast, too long, so let's just talk quickly about what the program actually offered. As many of you know, it is very difficult to get into the movie business without having some kind of track record or any contacts, especially if you don't live in Hollywood and you don't go schmoozing with the people in Starbucks. So Amazon Studios use this basically just to field submissions from people who otherwise would not be able to submit to them. Of course, hoping that there would be the occasional nugget in there that they would be able to get something out of. The way this worked is that you can choose between a children's series, I think it's adult scripts and so on that you can submit. So you can submit mini Bibles, you can submit scripts, you can submit trailers, anything that would give them some sort of an idea. They would have like a 30-day evaluation process. That's basically the closed submission. There's also like an open submission process, let me rephrase this, a public submission process where you can make all your materials available to the public, and the public can sort of make comments about it and vote on it. Now that makes sense for some things, and it makes absolutely no sense for other things. But basically, in any case, it would be like a 30-day process in most cases. And if after those 30 days Amazon decides that they really like your stuff, they would offer you what's called an option deal. An option deal, that's a very common process, basically. That's pretty much how every movie and television show starts out. Is like a producer or a studio would option your property and pay you like a fee. That fee could be anything, Jesus, that could be anything from $2,000 to $2 million. It sort of depends who the script writer or who the producer is and what's on the table. I suppose most big option fees these days are off the table. We used to hear 20 years ago, we used to have a lot of comic properties that were being optioned, like for example Jeff Smith's Bone, ElfQuest, all those independent comic book properties, and they got sort of like really decent six-figure sums, but I don't think you're going to get that anymore these days. Amazon is pretty cut and dried. I'll basically tell you, will flat out pay you $10,000. That's it. Poof. There you have it. And for $10,000, you're sort of like optioning the project to them for 1 year, with them having the option to renew it for another year. I think it's like another $10,000. And basically what that means for you as a filmmaker or a creator is that you're not allowed to touch your project anymore. So at this point you're basically done. You take your $10,000 and you can't make a comic out of it. You can't keep working on it, of course, unless you enter in some kind of agreement with Amazon and they hire you to keep working on a property. Most likely, especially in animation, there's lots of children's animation things, and it would be in Amazon's best interest to essentially hire the original creator to work on this. But after that, let's say, for example, like they decide to go ahead after this option process, there will be they will commission a pilot. And Amazon had these, that will be the next step. There's some kind of a pilot season, an internal pilot season on their website. Now, unfortunately, I was never able to really see that because, I live here in Switzerland, and In the United States, they would show it on Amazon Prime, but Amazon Prime here is sort of like there's not really too much on it, and I can't access anything from the US. So they would have these pilot seasons, and I suppose people were able to vote on it, or they would evaluate somehow which ones they liked and which ones they didn't like. To my knowledge, not too much got actually made. I think there were 2 children animated series that actually made it to pilot season and actually were then sent into production for a regular season order. But I can't see those here, so I'm not really 100. I would have to do some more research on it. But in terms of scripted TV shows, I'm not aware of anything that really was made. So in that regard, it really is not too big of a loss to the filmmaker, considering pretty much nothing got made. It was just like one more possibility or one more option for you to submit something without actually having an agent, a manager, or like any production contacts. Now let's talk a little bit about Amazon Studios in general, because I think this is the answer to why they're basically making this move. Amazon Studios, it pretty much, actually when I heard about it first a few years ago, it was maybe 5-6 years ago, I was quite shocked because, here you are, Amazon is sort of like this online retailer, and now all of a sudden they're, getting into the movie business. How does that make sense? And of course, Amazon already had started its Prime service, and they were trying to expand its Prime service. Netflix had just started out. So I guess Amazon realized they just wanted a piece of the pie. I mean, what exactly that pie was and how big that pie was and what it really meant wasn't probably not clear to anyone. But of course, Amazon people, they're not stupid. They know that the true value in content is basically ownership. As it is with everything else. I mean, let's be honest, Amazon makes most of its money off software and server storage stuff, which is all proprietary stuff. They own that software that they have created basically, and they're licensing it out, for example, to the CIA, government, and so on. And that they can only do that because they have ownership over that. And the same is with movies, I mean, once you make a movie and you own the movie, there's lots of ways that you can make money of it, And I think that's one of the reasons too why Netflix is sort of like building up their inventory of movies, and that's why Netflix usually wants all the rights. They don't make like split right deals and this and that. So you either go and you give everything to Netflix, or you get nothing to Netflix, and then you will not be on Netflix as an original. So Amazon wanted to get into the movie business, and I suppose the idea was also that they realized that like shows like Mad Men and Breaking Bad were sort of like atypical TV shows. So people were open to different type of material, different type of topics, subject matters, and so on and so on. So they started actually out pretty strong. Their first show that really stuck out was Transparent, which, of course, now has been disgraced thanks to Jeffrey Tambor's misbehavior. And quite frankly, I think Transparent, I really don't know. I mean, it's a difficult show to watch, just because the characters are so goddamn unlikable. And it did, however, get some kind of notoriety on the award seasons. I mean, I forgot what it won, but I think it won some kind of a Golden Globe or something. And another show that stuck out very early on, and that one I actually really liked, that was Mozart in a Jungle. It was about the inside story of like behind the scenes type of thing of the New York Symphony Orchestra, also based on a book. And that was a really, really good. That was really fresh. The first 2 seasons had terrific actors. That also won Emmys and Golden Globes. So they were actually off to a pretty good start with 2 shows that won awards pretty much right off the bat. However, critical acclaim doesn't really mean viewership, and from what I gather, I think the viewership was pretty low compared to like Stranger Things or some of the stuff that Netflix was putting out at the same time. And I think that they realized at some point they needed something maybe a little bit more commercial, and that was exactly at the time when the whole Me Too thing happened, like about last year, about this time. a little bit later. And there's a lot of people at Amazon Studios that were involved in the Me Too thing. I mean, the top of it was, of course, the leader and CEO who basically was disgraced and had to leave. And I think, if I remember this correctly, most of the top brass of Amazon Studios left. I think about 3/4 of people were either kicked out, fired, or left. And at the same time, Jeff Bezos was coming screaming, basically, like, hey, bring us the next Game of Thrones. Like, I don't think Jeff Bezos really knows nothing about movies, basically, but Game of Thrones, it's like, why would you ask for that? Why don't you make your own type of Game of Thrones thing? So, and of course, everybody was scrambling to fulfill Jeff Bezos' wishes, and like, where do we get the next Game of Thrones thing from? And then one bright mind must have come up with the idea, oh, there was this big thing that was in the movies a few years back called Lord of the Rings. Isn't that a little bit like Game of Thrones? So they approached the Tolkien estate about the rights. And they did get the rights of the Tolkien estates, of course, which made the Tolkien estate very, very happy. For $200 million, they bought the rights to Lord of the Rings. And supposedly the plan is to do 5 seasons. They committed to 5 seasons at the cost of up to $2 billion when all is said and done. Now, and I think now we're getting a little bit to the solution of the problem here. This is really a break it or make it moment, basically, for Amazon, because quite frankly, making a Lord of the Rings show these days, it's like flogging a dead horse. Literally, I mean, the last few movies haven't really been doing well. Generally, the tenor on the internet is sort of like, do we really need this? And that is the real question. I think it's just the fact that Amazon has no ideas, have no vision, and don't really know what to do anymore, basically. That it just went the safe route, and I think that will essentially, I'm not saying it's going to sink them, because Amazon is very diversified, but it will put another damper in Amazon Studios thing, and Netflix and Hulu and those other people that will just, move ahead and do other things. So basically, I think that, yeah, is it really important for us to have this open submission thing when you're looking at a studio that spends $2 billion on 5 seasons of Lord of the Rings? Not really, because quite frankly, you as an independent creator or filmmaker, you can't compete with that, and neither should you compete with that. This is not your cup of tea. There's nothing you can come up with that will ever convince them to spend $2 billion on your project. It's just not going to happen. That doesn't mean your project cannot happen, but it just means that it won't be happening at Amazon. So overall, I think it's really not that big of a deal for the independent creator. But what it shows, and that's kind of like what I really want to make this video, basically, is that what it really shows is that the mavericks of the last few years, like Amazon and Netflix and Hulu, and even some of the smaller OTT networks, they started out basically trying to be different than the traditional studios, and at the end of the day, they end up being exactly the same. They've created really this close network now that you cannot penetrate anymore as an independent filmmaker, unless you have an agent, a manager, or have some kind of clout or some kind of leverage. You're not gonna get in there anymore. That's it. It's done. Your chances of getting on Amazon are about just as good as getting on NBC or ABC or any of those studios. So I think it's just like the typical course of action in this capitalist type of environment. If you really want to get something made, you gotta have to make it yourself. And true change, and that has always been proven, will come from the bottom. In pop culture history, nothing has ever come from the top. It is just not possible. And Amazon basically proves again that they fail to see, fail to have vision, basically, to see that everything good, everything inventive, and anything innovative will come from the bottom up. It's never going to come from the top down. So just knowing that and looking at pop culture history, and you can look at films and music and games and anything, basically, I can guarantee you this Lord of the Rings thing will be a huge flop. I will certainly not be watching it, but I wish Amazon the best of luck, and I just wish in hindsight they would have worded their email maybe a little bit better than they actually did. So stay tuned and for my next video on distribution, and I will actually tell you what your possibilities are of getting your movie out there. Okay, bye.